And it didn't start. There we go. The motion, or the record will reflect that all members of council are present.
Thank you. Current business. Any questions on the consent calendar? Seeing none. Item 2, we have a proclamation. Our guest present today? Tim, this is for International Literacy Day. Please introduce the topic.
Good afternoon, Mayor Muldoon and members of the council. I'd like to introduce our literacy coordinator for the library. It's Ms. Cheryl Weiss, and she'd like to make a few brief comments.
Thank you. Welcome, Ms. Wise.
Thank you. Thank you, Council, for having us here, and thank you for supporting literacy services for the city. As you hopefully know, that there are about 25,000 people in Newport Mesa that have problems with reading and writing, and we are here to help them all. September 14th is our annual International Literacy Day celebration, which we hope you will all be able to attend. It's a day which we honor our learners for their amazing achievements throughout the year, including things like citizenship and job creation, and actually several learners this year have opened their own businesses. We have over 125 volunteers who support the program, and I think that we've done a lot of good things this year, including introducing our career online high school program. We have 10 spots available, 7 of which are already filled, and of those 7, over half of those people, actually 4 of those people are more than 50% completed through their high school diploma, which is a really exciting number for us. So again, thank you. We hope that you will all be able to attend International Literacy Day. I've got reminders here for you, if I can put them out for distribution. That's it.
Thank you. And where could someone learn more about volunteering?
We have a website, newportliteracy.org, and there's lots of literature, thank you. There's lots of literature in the library about the program and about volunteering, and on Volunteer Match as well.
Excellent. At this time, I'll read a proclamation, then we'll take a photo.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Whereas the need for a highly literate citizenry is necessary as Newport Beach moves toward an increasingly challenging future, and whereas approximately 10% of the residents of Newport Beach and many of the adults employed within the city are lacking the literacy skills necessary to meet these challenges, and whereas lack of literacy skills impacts not only their lives and the lives of their families, but their ability to work productively and their ability to fulfill participation as citizens, residents, and employees of our city. And whereas Newport Mesa Pro Literacy, a program at Newport Beach Public Library, works with adults seeking to develop their literacy skill to empower them to achieve greater success in their lives, at home, at work, and in our community. And whereas Newport Mesa Pro Literacy hosts an annual International Literacy Day event to highlight the importance of literacy in society and the great strides that program participants have made. Now, therefore, I, Kevin Muldoon, Mayor of the City of Newport Beach, do hereby proclaim September 14, 2017 as Literacy Awareness Day.
Go back? Yeah, I can help you. I can go back.
All right, next we have a presentation from Trauma Intervention Program, known as TIP, of Orange County.
Thank you, Mayor Muldoon, members of City Council, John Lewis, Chief of Police, and we're excited to be here today to talk to you a little bit about and make a presentation on the Trauma Intervention Program. And I think without stealing too much of the content that I know Chief Thompson and Sergeant Brian Moore from our office are going to provide you, I think it's important to note that this is a collaborative project that we worked on as both police and fire, truly partners in public safety to bring this really unique program to our community. And we have already seen in the short time that it's been implemented some pretty significant benefits. And they're going to identify those here for you and also be able to answer some questions. So without further ado, Sergeant Moore and Chief Thompson.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, council members, for having us. We appreciate the opportunity to present on the Trauma Intervention Program, or TIPS. Just get started. So it's a national nonprofit organization. It's been in Orange County since the mid-90s, and it actually started in Newport Beach. We had our first call out to TIPS in October of 2016. Their motto is citizens helping citizens in crisis, and that's exactly what they do. We'll show you what they do. So as far as the cost, very important aspect of this is it's only 12 cents per citizen annually. It currently comes out of the PD and fire department budget. There is no cost to the family or to the victims that respond to TIPS, and there's also no per response charge. So if we use them 100 times or 1,000 times, it's the same cost annually. TIP currently assists multiple jurisdictions in Orange County and multiple hospitals, including our local Hoag. Their volunteers, whether it's 2 a.m. or the 4th of July or a Sunday evening, they respond 24/7, 365 days of the year. They always available. The TIP volunteers, very professional, courteous, and above all, they're caring. The training that they go through is extensive, as well as the background checks that they do. Two of the TIP volunteers are Newport Beach residents, one of which is in the audience, Marty Fromm. She's a longtime Newport resident. And basically, and we'll go into this in just a minute a little bit more, but they provide emotional first aid as well as a liaison with the victims and us, the first responders, hospital staff, mortuary, coroners. They really interact with everyone. They know how the system works in Orange County should there be an unexpected death or injury. And probably one of the biggest things that they do that we really appreciate is they provide resources and referrals. Their resource and referral booklet is about 100 pages, and it's up to date and very organized and easy to read. And that's given to everybody that they respond to, the victims or the family, whoever needs it. So American Red Cross, counseling, support groups, whatever it is that they need, it's in that book, and that book is always being updated with current resources. They have everything. Pet services, if you've lost your pet, veteran services, they help you work through the insurance process, which we know is pretty in-depth. They even have a company should you have a death occur in your home or your business. They have cleanup company referrals that are really hard to find, but they'll come and help you clean up that whatever they need cleaning up in your home or in your work, your place of business. So as far as where they respond, anywhere and everywhere. Anywhere that's deemed safe, as long as the event occurs in Newport Beach. They do not have to be a resident or a citizen of Newport Beach. If they're a visitor, if they're an employee here, they'll respond. And like I said, a residence, a condo, apartment, they've even responded to the side of the 405 freeway, place of business, hotel, beach, wherever we call them, they'll come as long as it's safe. And many times we have them respond actually to the hospital to meet the family at the hospital. As far as what they respond to, anybody that we called them for, no job is too big or too small. No call is too big or too small. So anybody that's emotionally distraught, if they've had the death or the severe injury of a family member, possibly a driver or others who accidentally injure someone else. We know we don't, when it's an accident, we don't set out to harm someone else, and sometimes it just happens. Survivors or witnesses of critical events, they'll respond to any of this. Children home alone after a traumatic event. The list really goes on extensively as far as what they'll respond to, and we have a few examples for you of stuff they've responded to us specifically. As far as the statistics, since our first call in October, they've responded to us, to the city of Newport Beach 44 times. They've helped in those 44 calls. 183 people have been on those 44 calls that they've assisted. They've provided 277 services or referrals to those 183 people. The response time in that time frame, nearly a year, has been 20 to 22 minutes. And as far as their reliability, they've responded 100% of the time we've called them. They've never not responded to a call for us out of those 44 calls. As far as process on scene.
Yeah, as far as the process and how TIP works with fire and PD, typically fire and PD will coordinate and determine whether or not a TIP response is required. And if so, they'll determine who's going to make the formal request, which is done through our dispatch center. Dispatch contacts TIP directly, and generally, well, almost always a TIP volunteer arrives within 20 to 25 minutes of the call. And then someone from Fire or PD will get with the victim or affected person and let them know that somebody is on the way to assist them with emotional support. And once they arrive, somebody from Fire or PD will get with the TIP volunteer and just give them the basic rundown, basic circumstances of what occurred, so they have something to work with. And then we'll facilitate the introduction with the community member or witness or affected person. Their services can be declined at any time by us, even while en route. If we need to call them and tell them not to respond, they'll do that. And then they can also be declined by whoever the community member or witness that we're calling them for. And a lot of times they'll just hang around and they won't be used, but they're happy to be there. As far as some of the benefits, the main benefit for public safety here is that we can direct the victim or affected person to a volunteer who's skilled in providing that emotional support component. So we can focus on other things that we do best, like rescue efforts and conducting investigations. And we can even, once the scene is safe and we've done everything we need to do, we can actually leave and go back in service if the TIP volunteer needs to stick around and assist with further support for the victim, they'll do so. And one of the other important aspects is they don't interfere with anything we have to do. They're very good about that, and they're very cooperative, and they basically act at our direction.
Just a couple of specifics here as far as how they've helped the fire department. It's pretty extensive. I won't go into all of them, but definitely we appreciate their knowledge and their background, their resources on scene, and definitely allowing the firefighters to continue their job on duty and have the TIP volunteer take care of the person, take care of the family. And frequently, as Officer Moore stated, is that we often stay on scene after a call is over, helping a family, helping in the aftermath of a traumatic event. And now we have somebody to hand that care off and that emotional support off, contact family members and such. So these are just a couple of the calls that they've helped us on. They've responded when we had a woman in her 80s who was extremely distraught after losing her home to a fire. They helped her get in touch with resources, with family, with American Red Cross. We've even had them respond to the death of a dog after an accident, and the pet owner was extremely upset. We had a very traumatic call with a person who jumped off a parking structure in Newport Beach, and the witnesses were extremely distraught, as well as the spouse that arrived on scene. And TIP was there for them, and they actually came out twice to that incident. We've had an adult son who died in the home unexpectedly, a father who died of suicide in the home, a young family who experienced a miscarriage and were extremely distraught over that. A father whose family was in Texas. They weren't here. He was a visitor here, and the family lived in Texas. So we had to, they worked with the family on that. And they've even responded to not necessarily traumatic events, but a couple in their 80s. The wife had dementia. She was very anxious, and they needed help. They needed help with resources and getting in touch with the family. We also had a man who died in Newport, but the family lived in Costa Mesa, so they responded there because the event happened in Newport. And multiple calls where we've had them meet us at the hospital. They've had them meet the family at the hospital. And we even had one particularly traumatic event where a family member died in the home, and there were children present when it happened, and they really helped those children. That was a really unique situation.
So specifically to PD, how do they really help us? Well, a lot of times when we go to these traumatic events, we're dealing, at least initially, primarily with the emotional support component because they're devastated and it's almost a full-time job. So having the TIP volunteers allows us to direct them to that person for that component while we focus on crime scene preservation and investigations, the tasks at hand for us. And they just have a lot of information with regard to referrals and resources that they can help the victim with. In terms of the type of assistance we request them for, we have a list here of fatal traffic accidents, in-home deaths, death notifications, and responses to hospitals. I'd say probably more often than not, the in-home deaths is probably one of the most frequent calls that we request TIP for, and then followed by fatal traffic accidents. And then next, these are just some testimonials from our officers and a sergeant that has worked with TIPs and requested them on calls. And it's basically just a testament to their cooperation, their quick response, their compassion and empathy for the victims.
But we'd just like to finish up if you guys have any questions. But again, we really wanted to say thank you to the city of Newport Beach for embracing this program. It's definitely, we feel, a win-win situation for both our citizens, our visitors, whoever needs them, as well as us, public safety, as well as the city. It's just an all-around benefit for a marginal, in my opinion, a marginal cost. So if you guys have any questions either for us or for our volunteer, Marty Fromm, we would be happy to help.
Well, thank you, Mr. Moore and Mrs. Thompson, for the presentation. We have a question from Councilwoman Dixon.
Well, I just want to commend you and commend our community volunteers to participate in the program and go through the training and the hours and be on call within 20 minutes. Did you say there are only 2 that we have in Newport, or we have more access to more?
Yes, we have access to the entire system, but 2 of them happen to be within our city limits.
Well, I commend one of them, so thank you for being here. And I first learned about this at our Public Safety Day, and you had a table, and I goes, what is the TIP program? So I'm delighted to know more, and for a nominal cost, that type of service of benefit to the community, and then the ability to relieve our public safety personnel to do the hard work that needs to be done in a critical situation. So thank you. I think it's an excellent program in my opinion, and I'm glad it's an opportunity for citizens to become more involved in helping others in our community. So thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other requests, we do. Councilman Herdman.
Outstanding presentation, just excellent content. You're doing God's work, and we all appreciate it. I didn't see anything about contact information, how you reach TIP.
We typically request them through dispatch. Our dispatch centers has their direct line, and so we'll contact our dispatch and they contact TIP directly.
And if we have a resource that TIP might want to take advantage of, what would be the process for getting that resource information to you?
If it's a resource for TIP in order to give to citizens,
yes,
that would go through TIP of Orange County on their website.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, which is how I think they get most of their referrals, and their resources are people that contact TIP in order to be in this fantastic resource book that they have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Public comments on agenda and non-agenda items, please come forward. Seeing none, City Attorney Harp.
Thank you, Mayor. The City Council will adjourn to closed session to discuss items 4A through B including meeting with the city manager, Dave Kiff, Assistant City Manager Carol Jacobs, Human Resources Director Barbara Salvini, and Peter Brown to discuss labor negotiations with the Newport Beach Police Association, as well as meeting with legal counsel regarding one matter of potential litigation.
Thank you. We are recessed until the 7 o'clock regular meeting. Call the meeting to order for the August 8th, 2017 regular council meeting. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
The record will reflect that all members of council are present.
Thank you. Mr. Harp, is there a closed session report?
Thank you, Mayor Muldoon. There's no closed session report this evening.
Thank you. At this time, we'll be led in the pledge by Councilman Piotr. Please rise.
If you'll join me, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing. Councilman Herdman is going to lead us in the invocation.
Be prayerful for us who lead and serve. We pray that your presence will be here in this room and in our lives. We are God's workmanship, created to do good works. Let us plan, guide us in our work tonight and every day that follows. Let God work in all of us and through all of us. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Madam Clerk.
The city provides a yellow sign-in card to assist in the preparation of the minutes. The completion of the card is not required in order to address the city council. If the optional sign-in card has been completed, it should be placed in the box provided at the podium. The City Council of Newport Beach welcomes and encourages community participation. Public comments are generally limited to 3 minutes per person to allow everyone to speak. Written comments are encouraged as well. The City Council has the discretion to extend or shorten the time limit on agenda or non-agenda items. As a courtesy, please turn cell phones off or set them in the silent mode.
Thank you. Now is time for City Council announcements for non-discussion items. These are items that council members would like to be introduced for future agendas. Mr. O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last couple of weeks have been a fun one. We unfortunately had to say goodbye to Kim Brandt, and I was able to listen to Councilmember Dixon gave a great farewell, and then I was able to represent Senators Moorlach and Bates in a proclamation that they received for her from the state capitol. But then it got better when National Night Out, with which we celebrated both at Bonita Canyon Sports Park, and then we also had over at the Spyglass Hill community picnic, and well attended. I appreciate all of our council members who were able to attend our Spyglass Hill event as well. Fashion Island just celebrated their 50th anniversary. The concert on the Green was remarkably well attended yet again. And then just a couple quick announcements. I've got office hours up at Newport Coast Community Center this coming Thursday, starting at 8 a.m. And then also, since we won't be meeting the rest of the month of August, I'll just announce the Oasis Talent Show is August 23rd. It is one of the best things that happens in Newport Beach every year, so I'll encourage everyone to go. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I have a couple. Announcing on behalf of the library, the Arts Commission, the City of Newport Beach Arts Commission is seeking public input on the submissions for Phase 3 of the Sculpture in the Civic Center Park exhibition, scheduled for opening the end of October, October 28th. Arts Orange County is managing the coordination of the call to artists and a community survey. And they will also be moderating a public forum on Wednesday, August 23rd at 6 p.m. here in the council chambers. The City Arts Commission will be in attendance, as well as Richard Stein of Arts OC and Professor Joe Lewis, together with a two-person artist selection panel of notable artists in the community in Orange County. The panel will review the submissions and recommend selections for the City Arts Commission approval. And members of the public are strongly encouraged to attend and offer their thoughts on the submissions. And then finally, the City Arts Commission will consider the panel recommendations at their regular meeting on September 14th. So in other words, it's a call to action for members of the community to participate in the sculpture exhibit selection process. And then item number 2, I like to announce this every year. I think this is one of the greatest benefits of being a resident of Newport Beach. It's called the Fire Medics, one of many benefits, Fire Medics for Emergency Program. And you can find out information. I don't know if we have these brochures available, but you could certainly find it on the website. But the gist of it is for Newport Beach residents, for an annual membership fee of $60, that if you were, sadly, but importantly, needing emergency paramedic 911 services, your insurance company would only be billed $60. So it's like an insurance for paramedic services for residents of Newport Beach. There's more information on the website or calling the fire department, 949-644-3383. It's fantastic, and I urge people to learn more about it. And I see Fire Chief Duncan out there with a thumbs up. So it really is a terrific program. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Herdman.
I make a list for each meeting because I feel it's important that my constituents, as well as all of you in the city, are aware of what I'm doing in between council meetings. Since our last council meeting, I attended a West Newport Association meeting. I attended Kim Brandt's retirement event. I also attended a public hearing on seawalls. I want to compliment Patrick on the job, Patrick Alford, on the job that he did in that hearing. Unfortunately, many of the people who attended the hearing thought it was an opportunity to voice their concern about seawalls and the proposed 9-inch height of the seawall, and that was not the purpose of the hearing, and Patrick did an excellent job of keeping it going in the right direction. My wife and I attended an Orange County Fair dinner for elected officials. I spoke at the most recent Balboa Island Improvement Association general membership meeting. Will already mentioned the Spyglass Hill picnic on National Night Out. Had a great time last week at the Junior Guard Monster Mile event. Brad held, I helped him out, the water quality monthly meeting that's held here at the city. Several of us attended the Fashion Island 50th anniversary celebration. We had the annual Balboa Island Improvement Association Sandcastle contest last Saturday, and I was asked to be a judge in that, and that was not easy. Big Canyon Reservoir Tour, George Murdoch was offered this tour to several of us, and several of us attended just yesterday. And then last thing, I'm helping the former Mayor Evelyn Hart, who's on the board of the Newport Beach Animal Shelter, to form an advisory committee for the purpose of raising funds for the animal shelter. Thank you.
Okay, Councilman Avery.
None.
Mayor Pro Tem Duffield.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to report that our Harbor Master 6-month experimental program is running well. We're 2 months into it, and all I've ever heard from the boaters and people who use our harbor is they think it's fantastic. And 4 more months to go. So wanted to let everyone know that that was working.
Thank you. And I had also the privilege of attending the 50th anniversary of Fashion Island with council members O'Neill, Herdman, Avery, and significant others. And my mother told a nice story about when she was a little girl running around Fashion Island and how exciting it was to have an outdoor mall. Of course, my wife unfortunately likes Fashion Island too much, so I'm cursed with the lineage there. But regarding agendas for future council discussions, I've been discussing an idea about Friends of Newport Beach Animal Shelter with former Mayor Nancy Gardner regarding our dog license fees and using those funds to assist with Newport Beach Animal Shelter funding. I'd like to schedule a presentation and discussion at a future council meeting with Friends of Newport Beach Animal Shelter and request the staff meet with their representatives in the coming weeks in preparation of the meeting. Madam Clerk.
This is a time in which council members may pull items from the consent calendar for discussion. Those are items 1 through 16. Public comments are invited on consent calendar items. Speakers must limit comments to 3 minutes. Before speaking, please state your name for the record. If any item is removed from the consent calendar by a council member, members of the public are invited to speak on each item for up to 3 minutes per item. All matters listed on a consent calendar are considered to be routine and will all be enacted by one motion in the form listed below. Council members have received detailed staff reports on each of the items recommending an action. There will be no separate discussion of these items prior to the time the City Council votes on the motion, unless members of the City Council request specific items to be discussed and are removed from the consent calendar for separate action.
Council, any items to pull from the consent calendar, items 1 through 16. Mr. O'Neill?
I lodge a no vote on number 6, but pull none.
Thank you. Mr. Piotr?
You're pulling number 5.
Number 5 to be pulled. Councilwoman Dixon?
No.
Councilmember Herdman?
None.
Councilmember Avery?
None.
And Mayor Pro Tem Duffield?
Thank you. Sorry. I have none.
Thank you. And I'm going to pull item 6 so I can learn more about this. All right. And do you have a motion, Mr. Duffield?
I do.
Mayor Pro Tem Duffield, before you do that, we had a couple of things I hope you could include in the motion. One is there's an error in the contract on item 10, and that error would reflect the number that's in the 10B. The 352,751 is the correct number. I think we say 342 in the contract. And number 8, my partner has a business interest associated with that, so I haven't been involved in that discussion. I'm just declaring that. I think that's it. Did I miss any of them? Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Mayor, can we pull 16 just to talk about it?
All right. Item number 16, pulled by Councilman Piotr.
Okay, I move the balance of the consent calendar items 1 through 16 with items number 5 and number 16 pulled by Councilman Piotr and a no vote on item number 6 from Councilman O'Neill and with an error on item number 10 as explained by staff. And do I need to say that you're recusing yourself?
Yeah, I think you just note that Dave recused himself on number 8.
And Dave, City Manager Kiff recuses himself on item 8.
And one other item, I believe Mayor Muldoon pulled item number 6.
Okay, I'm sorry. With item number 6 pulled by Mayor Muldoon.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Yes.
One brief clarification. Since it's been pulled, I would no longer, part of the motion would no longer include my no vote.
Let's have it.
Okay, I'd like to include that as well. No vote. Pulled by Councilman O'Neill.
All right.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. Thank you. Let's vote on the balance. Thank you. Public comments on items that have not been pulled. So items 1 through 16, excluding items 5, 6, and 16. Seeing no request for public comment, let's vote.
Prior to reading the vote, I'll read the ordinance titles for ordinance number 2017-11, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Newport Beach adopting zoning code amendment number CA 2017-003 to implement new state law requirements relating to accessory dwelling units. Councilmember Herdman, we need your vote, and Councilmember Avery. And also ordinance number 2017-12, an interim ordinance of the City Council of the City of Newport Beach allowing A-frame signs in Lido Marina Village. Is it not coming up? Councilmember Herdman? Thank you. The motion carries unanimously, 7-0.
Thank you. Now we'll go to item 5, staff.
Maybe Mr. Mayor and council members, I think Mr. Piotr has been working with the staff on this one, and I know we could walk through some of his concerns if he'd like. I think Mr. Piotr also wanted to possibly continue this item, and then he and I had a discussion about if that were the case, maybe just passing a portion of it, and that is it's Resolution 2017-53 involving declaring the intent to set a public hearing. That way we could go back and address some of Mr. Piotr's concerns, but still keep the public hearing on schedule. But certainly I defer to you folks as to how much you want to delve into this.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I can be brief as far as the concerns without going into the detail of it. In several places of the agreement, the city basically is getting into the waste haulers' business, telling them who to hire or how they need to hire them, how they need to do their business, how they need to collect, how they need to interact with their customers, when they have to reveal their customers to the city in compliance with the reports, along with the term of the agreement being 3 years plus 2 one-year agreements, which is their way of kind of holding it over the heads of the haulers to make sure they comply. But it also precludes haulers, if they want to do a long-term agreement with customers, to maybe amortize equipment that they might buy for them, probably not just dumpsters, but compactors and other things that they may do. And the idea that staff and I tossed around earlier is that if there was a streamlined process where you could punish or even withdraw these agreements from haulers, that it would suffice to do that rather than getting into their business. And I think there's some good creative ways to come up with. Carol Jacobs, the Assistant City Manager, and I have talked about ways to encourage them to comply rather than use a hammer over their head. So we don't need to go into all the details tonight if the council will indulge us and continue it, except for the item of posting the public hearing. I think we can work out a lot of the details. That was short, wasn't it?
Well, relatively. I'm kind of confused, though. Is there a request for us for action?
So I would propose to continue this to the first meeting in September, with the exception of item C, which would be to, as Mr. Kiff indicated, that we would declare and conduct a public hearing regarding this issue.
All right.
So it'd be approval of item C and continuations of items A and B, I guess.
Okay, thank you. I'll second that.
Actually, we need A approved as well, A and C.
So A and C approved, B would be continued.
All right. I will second that. Before we go out to the council or out to the public for comments, any discussion at the council level? Public comments on this item? All right, seeing none. We have a motion and a second. Let's vote.
Motion carries unanimously, 7-0.
Thank you, staff. Next, item 6, which I requested we pull.
So, Mr. Mayor and council members, this item, and I'll wait for Mark to come up. This item involves Senate Bill number 1, and under Senate Bill number 1, which was passed just recently, and just for the audience's recollection, Senate Bill 1 increased the gas tax, the diesel tax, some vehicle fees, as well as an electric vehicle fee to fund road projects. It has a local component, and that local component, under the bill, we're required to start to tell the state, the council is,
what projects we think would be eligible for and compete for Senate Bill 1 funds. So this is an action to propose that. And as I say that, I'm very respectful of some of your concerns and concerns in the public that maybe they didn't like this increase in the first place and there could be a referendum to overturn it. It's staff's position, at least, that we don't lose anything by designating the projects. If SB 1 goes away or is overturned, these projects just go back into our list of things that we fund with a smaller amount of revenue. But Mark can add any comments to that, but I think that's kind of the gist of the issues here.
Thank you, Dave. Yeah, just to add, the only other piece of information is this funding is being controlled by the California Transportation Commission. And we do have a deadline that was set to receive this information by September, but that deadline has been recently extended to October. So if you would like to continue this item, we have time to do so.
Thank you. Any questions from the dais? All right, so is this submission an endorsement of SB 1 in any way?
I don't believe so, Mr. Mayor, but I think it's, hopefully there isn't anything that talks about that in the resolution. For us, it was a chance just to say, these are the projects we would apply for if the funding stays.
And essentially, it's our opportunity to get tax returns. So we're being taxed. It's our opportunity to bring the funds back to the taxpayers in this situation.
I think that's an appropriate way of looking at it, yes, sir.
All right. Any public comments on this item? All right. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the dais. Is there a motion?
I'll move approval. I do want to state, like you had indicated, that this is an evil tax, regressive tax, that is a wrong tax, and I just want to make sure that everybody knows we're not endorsing that. Thank you.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Any other discussion on this item before we vote?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Mr. O'Neill, I'm sorry.
Briefly, I'm still going to lodge a no vote on this, and the reason I'm going to lodge a no vote is frankly because I believe that the state legislature is using submissions like this as PR in an effort to counter any referendum that we have in the coming year. However, I will note, I absolutely do not believe any person that is up on the dais voting yes on this is endorsing, and I think that there are very good, valid reasons to vote yes up here. So I wanted to at least explain my no vote, but I think that it's frankly right on a razor's edge. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to be voting no on this simply because I don't want it to. I don't want us to look like we're endorsing the movement to overturn this unnecessary tax. It's a state spending problem. It's plenty of revenue with one of the largest economies in the world, and Sacramento is on vacation. So I'm going to join you, Councilman O'Neill.
I, too, am going to vote no. And I certainly can't influence how you vote, but I think it's important that we send a message to Sacramento regarding this piece of legislation.
All right. Seeing no other requests to speak, let's vote.
With council members Muldoon, Duffield, Herdman, O'Neill, and Piotr voting no, the motion fails 2-5.
All right, and I actually understand why any council member on this dais would vote yes, and I was very tempted to do so. I just don't want to send a message that the way the government's running Sacramento is acceptable. It's not acceptable. All right, next item. Item 16. Staff?
Mr. Mayor and council members, I placed this item on the agenda after some consultation with the police chief and seeing what at least a couple of other cities have done regarding a Senate bill that relates to local government's law enforcement arms and their cooperation with federal immigration officers. I had proposed a letter to send to the California State Legislature in hopefully respectful opposition to that bill, and that is up for your consideration tonight.
Okay, thank you. Before I move forward on the staff, sorry, did I take public comment on that last item?
did verify with the city clerk
Okay.
that you did take public comment.
Perfect. Just want to check. I moved by
And no
so
one came
quickly.
forward.
Thank you very much. Okay. I see. Thank you, Mr. Kiff, for your remarks. Councilman Piotr.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I just want to take the opportunity to discuss it. I had talked to Mr. Kiff about it and asked if it could also be agendized, and I've talked to Chief Lewis about it and talked several times about, we're in a situation where, in effect, SB 54 will make us a sanctuary state. And so without getting into the immigration side of it, but we are talking about illegal immigration and particularly criminals that are illegal aliens, that this will really tie the hands of law enforcement. So it's an important thing for us as a city to go and register our complaints about this. And if the mayor would indulge us, I would love to hear Chief Lewis maybe give us a couple of highlights, not the full exposition version, but.
Yes, Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. I'm John Lewis, your Chief of Police, and I can touch on a couple high-level general points about this piece of legislation. And largely, this is drawing from some statements that have made publicly in opposition from California Police Chiefs Association. And really, what it's important to understand in terms of this discussion is that public safety really is the primary concern of local law enforcement. I think that's important just to the overall context of this discussion. But that being said, there's instances where providing public safety requires us to partner with federal agencies. So the concerns expressed with Senate Bill 54 by law enforcement leaders throughout the state are that it will potentially make it harder to apprehend dangerous criminals and has a potential for negative consequences that threaten safety concerns in our communities. And those are the opposition themes and concerns that you have heard, and they're also outlined in that staff report as well. What the bill does, and the language there is in the attachment, limits California law enforcement from using agency or department monies, facilities, property, equipment, or personnel to investigate, detain, detect, or arrest persons for immigration enforcement purposes.
Excellent. Thank you. Any other comments from the dais? Questions, comments? Yes.
No, I just wanted to say thanks, Chief Lewis. And again, this is less an issue of what are we going to do about our borders and more of an issue of we need to make sure that crime is controlled, and the ability for our law enforcement to work together is going to be curtailed by this. So thank you very much, Chief Lewis and Mr. Kiff and the council for working hard and going ahead and making an opinion on this. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Public comments on this item? Please step forward, identify yourself.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Betty Robinson. I'm here to request that the City of Newport Beach submit a letter formally opposing SB 54, the Sanctuary State Bill. I've given you a sample letter from the City of Glendora. This bill would further limit cooperation of local law enforcement with ICE in terms of information exchange and notification of the impending release of criminal illegal aliens from custody. SB 54 would allow illegal alien criminals to be released into our communities even after they've served time for serious felonies, which would include, as listed by Senator Pat Bates during a Senate Appropriations Committee hearing, human trafficking involving a minor, rape of an unconscious person using a date rape drug, assault with a deadly weapon, or inflicting corporal injury upon a child, to mention a few. If ICE is not notified by local law enforcement of the illegal alien criminals' release, as this bill directs, then ICE is obligated to seek them out in the community, thereby putting ICE agents as well as residents at risk. Our own Sheriff Hutchins, along with sheriffs in Los Angeles, San Bernardino, Sacramento, and many other counties, all oppose SB 54. During the Senate hearing I mentioned earlier, the author of SB 54, Senator De Leon, gave the committee assurances that his bill, quote, does not prohibit, curtail, impair in any way contractual obligations with ICE, unquote, but we know better. SB 54 will put federal funds in jeopardy. Sheriff Hutchins just confirmed this in a recent speech when she said a new requirement to obtain federal grant mandates no restriction of sharing data information regarding the immigration status of any individual. I wonder how ethical this bill is when it will only benefit illegal aliens, and Senator De Leon has publicly admitted that half his relatives are here illegally. Sanctuary jurisdictions attract illegal aliens who know they are safe from deportation there. That's a terrible lesson learned by the victims and families of crimes committed by illegal alien criminals, and many times after multiple deportations. Please go to ca.gov for Governor Brown's contact information, then email and/or call his office to state your opposition to SB 54. Thank you.
Thank you. Other public comments on this item? Please step forward. And if a couple of you plan on speaking, please go to opposing podiums so we can move this along. Please state your name for the record.
Denise Aliberti. Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Denise Aliberti, and I live in Newport Coast. Excuse the braces. Today, I'm here to discuss SB 54, otherwise known as the Sanctuary State Bill authorized by De Leon. SB 54 was only written to defy President Trump, a duly elected president by the people of the United States, including California. De Leon, Laura, Baccara, and others are actually practicing criminal sedition against the laws and government of the United States. Sedition is defined by the United States Code 18, U.S. Code 2384, which proves that the members of the California legislature are in clear violation due to untoward conduct, voting for, passing, and sustaining a bill that actually makes California a sanctuary state. This is a clear violation and rebellion against the stated constitutional authority and jurisdiction of the United States. Congress has absolute authority to mandate immigration laws, and the state legislatures do not have the power to contradict them. The citizens of Newport Beach have a right to their expectations of protection under our local government body. I'm asking you here today to protect us from SB 54. The federal government has issued new policies to take place immediately in regards to the illegal immigration in sanctuary cities. If you do not support the federal policies and side with SB 54, our law and order city could lose millions of dollars. The millions that might be lost are funds that should be going to offset our unfunded pension liabilities. Newport is a place where families feel safe to raise their children, seniors feel safe to live out their lives in retirement, and visitors come to vacation in safety. This will all change if SB 54 is approved. While there are unknown numbers of criminal foreign-born in the county and state prisons, the federal prison system has reported 25% of incarcerated criminals are foreign-born. Now I'm aware of the special interest groups that quote talking points and creative facts saying that illegal immigrants make our country safe because they come forward and report crime. I call that a bull-faced lie, because if that were true, which there are no studies to prove that, there would be extremely low foreign criminal crime, as all criminals would have been discovered and reported. Case in point, last week in Portland, Oregon, there was a 31-year-old illegal who had been deported 20 times to Mexico already. He sexually assaulted a 65-year-old woman at knife point. This illegal had been protected by sanctuary city rules and has a long criminal rap sheet. We have an MS-13 infiltration in the state and county and country. For those that are unfamiliar with MS-13, they are from South America and are considered as dangerous as ISIS. Where do you think that these criminals are going to hide if SB 54 passes? I ask you now, which one of you are willing to sacrifice your wife, your children, your mother, yourself, not only to this illegal law, but the out-of-line legislature that's running this state? Our good, hardworking citizens of Newport Beach do not want to become a sanctuary city or state. We want to live in the rule of law, raise our families, and live our lives safely. Therefore, I'm asking you today in writing to notify the legislature by resolution that we are standing up in resistance against SB 54. And I will not abide by any law that contradicts federal law and state and has no intention of becoming a sanctuary city or state. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
I'm Dr. Newman. I live in Redlands. I drove 84 miles to be here to encourage you to deal with this issue in an intelligent way. No on SB 54. I'm going to provide for you a little bit of historical perspective on this matter from personal experience, and some of those who are here this evening were there at these various events. We were at Duarte twice while the sheriff's department addressed people, and the illegal aliens and their sympathizers disrupted that meeting. They then went down the street and blocked the street, interfering with people's lives and introducing problems of safety. I have discussed it with many of those officers, the deputy sheriffs, and shared with them that I was ashamed of them, that they were emasculated and they just permitted these thugs to interfere with people's lives. But that's what's occurred on numerous occasions. I've been a witness. We've been to Atlanta, the detention facility for ICE, on various occasions and witnessed what these thugs are doing outside. We scheduled with the sheriff of this county at the training facility to get input from the people and provide for Homeland Security. Many of these thugs were present when people started stepping up to the microphone to speak. They then became very rowdy, threw the chairs around, jumped up on chairs, and the officers dragged them out. I talked to the commanding officer and said, okay, now that the disruption is gone, let's continue with the meeting. By that time, he was emasculated as well. I told him I was very displeased with his behavior. Now, some of us visited the Santa Ana jail, where the sexually confused have come to this country with the assistance of Ricardo Lara and Kevin De Leon to claim political asylum. We've seen them. We attended then the city council meeting, of which they were completely disruptive, jumped up on chairs, yelled and screamed, and created absolute chaos. We've been in many other events where this exact thing has occurred. We've been at city councils and kept city councils there because there were more of us attending till way past midnight. You are going to have the opportunity to make a wise decision, and we are in support of good judgment. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you. Any other speakers? And folks, if you plan on speaking on this item, please come forward now. Please state your name.
Steve Serra, Mission Viejo. I ask you to oppose Senate Bill 54, the California Values Act, so-called, but accurately nicknamed the Sanctuary State Bill. In SB 54, the legislative majority continues to pretend that there is no overlap between crime suppression and immigration enforcement, that you can draw a sharp line between them, and that the public can be protected with local agencies giving scant cooperation to federal authorities. This is from the December 3, 2014 issue of Investor's Business Daily. According to the Congressional Research Service, more than 26,000 illegals already released under the Obama regime's priority enforcement scheme between 2009 and 2011 went on to commit 58,000 new crimes. Among them, 59 murders, 21 attempted murders, and more than 5,000 major or violent criminal offenses. The released aliens also committed more than 6,000 drug crimes and more than 8,000 DUI violations, some of which involved manslaughter charges. Close quote. Since 2014, California's Trust Act has been shielding criminals that even the Obama administration would have deported, and ICE arrests of convicts are way down. But agencies can still inquire about jail inmates' immigration status and turn over the worst of the worst to ICE. Last year, the Orange County Sheriff's Department identified 391 such inmates. Sheriff Hutchins says we must take advantage of every opportunity to keep these serious offenders, like murderers and rapists, out of our neighborhoods. But this bill would effectively prohibit local law enforcement from asking about prisoners' immigration status and letting federal authorities interview them and providing release date information. This sanctuary state bill's don't ask, don't tell policy shows that the legislative majority in Sacramento is quite willing to jeopardize the safety of law-abiding Americans so as to prevent deportation of illegal aliens who are committing serious crimes. That is evil, and it's not a necessary evil. The only real problem the bill purports to address is solved by making it clear that victims and witnesses and people reporting crimes are not even asked about their immigration status. The bill's legislative findings say immigrants are valuable and essential members of the California community, implying that crime-committing illegal immigrants are valuable and essential community members. Well, if that reflects California values, then let's return to American values. American policy has never been to callously take in and keep foreign criminals who would prey on Americans. The very first immigration action Congress ever took in 1788, back when it left immigration to the states, was to urge the states to pass proper laws for preventing the transportation of convicted malefactors from foreign countries into the United States. Laws like SB 54 subvert our system of self-government. They teach, contrary to our rule of law principles, that people do not have a serious moral obligation to obey the law, and government does not have a serious moral obligation to enforce it. In diminishing respect for law, they create more lawbreakers and more victims of crime. And they weaken fidelity to our founding principles, corrupting our nation. Our new president has vowed to restore the rule of law in the United States. Let's hold him to it. Let's help him do it.
Thank you. Any other public speakers on this item? All right, seeing no more, I'll bring it back to the dais.
I'll move staff recommendation.
I'll second it.
All right, moved by Councilman Piotr, seconded by Councilman Herdman. Let's vote.
The motion carries unanimously, 7-0.
No applause, please. No applause. Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Public comments are invited on non-agenda items generally considered to be within the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council. Speakers must limit comments to 3 minutes. Before speaking, please state your name for the record.
Any public comments on non-agenda items? Those are items that are not on the agenda for this evening. Yes, please state your name.
My name is Ty Hansen. I'm a resident of Costa Mesa. I live and work in Costa Mesa. And I'm here to speak about a fire that happened about 9 months ago. November 11th, 2016. You might remember it. It happened up on West 16th Street and Monrovia Avenue. Well, two 10,000 square feet storage units burnt to the ground. I don't know if anybody here remembers that or not, but I'm here to talk to the council members, and in particular, Mr. Avery, you cover our area up there. And I'm here to ask questions about how such a thing can happen. This was a big deal. A lot of people lost a lot of stuff there. This was a 4-alarm fire that probably cost the city of Newport Beach millions to clean up. This was a big, big deal. And I'm one of the tenants, former tenants of that place. I lost everything in my unit, and I've come to know all the rest of the tenants of those two 10,000 square foot buildings. That's 20,000 square foot. That's like 10 houses worth of stuff went up in flames there. And I have not been approached or talked to or questioned, or nobody's said anything about, nobody's called me and said, hey, is there anything we can do for you or anything like that. I'm here to ask you in particular, Mr. Avery, and the council members to form an inquiry or look into this. I want answers. I want to know how something like this can happen. Here's what I know to be a fact. Since they were built in 1971, those buildings had never been fire inspected. I want to know how that's possible. I also want to, I'm here to hold you to, and you, the civil servants that are here too, to do your jobs, to serve the citizens. The number one purpose of these councils, and the reason why everybody shows up and people get paychecks from the city of Newport Beach, is to keep people safe. That's the number one purpose. And you let 100 people down up there. It's not just me. It's not you might have read about it in the papers. A homeless guy caught the place on fire or something like that. But I'm here to tell you that there were dozens of hardworking business people there and their families that are still struggling today. I want you to ask yourself, and I want there to be some, I want answers and we want answers. There's a lot of people that want answers on how something like this can happen. That's why I'm here. I'm here to ask you to look into it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello, my name is Tina Marie Rufo, and I'd actually like to start out by passing all the council members with a little information packet. Never mind. Like I said, my name is Tina Marie Rufo, and I'm an advocacy and outreach intern at Alzheimer's of Orange County. And I'm here to invite you to the 2017 Walk for Alzheimer's. Since 1982, Alzheimer's of Orange County has been the country's largest local nonprofit organization dedicated to providing free education, support, and advocacy to people and families living with memory loss. We exist to provide direct care and services to the families who need us. The Walk for Alls is the country's largest community event to raise awareness and funds for this effort. Each year, over 10,000 people participate in our Walk for Alls, uniting the entire community, including family, friends, co-workers, elected officials, social groups, and more, in the fight against dementia. This fall, all 3 walks are back at your favorite locations. Saturday, October 4th in Laguna Niguel at the Regional Park, Saturday, October 28th in Huntington Beach, and Saturday, November 11th at Angel Stadium in Anaheim. There is no fee to register, and we invite folks to participate in fundraising to support this local work. The Walk for Alls is the only Alzheimer's walk in the county where 100% of funds raised remain local. These funds support programs, advocacy, research, and support services for those struggling with all forms of dementia. As the county's 3rd leading cause of death, more than 84,000 Orange County residents are living with dementia, a number that will triple by 2025. Now, more than ever, we need your help. Take the first step toward a dementia-free community by participating in a Walk for Alls. Get ready, get registered by visiting www.alzoc.org/walk or by calling our 24-hour helpline at 1-844-HELP-ALZ. That's 844-435-7259. Join Alzheimer's Orange County as we provide care and support until there's a cure. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments on non-agenda items? All right, seeing none, or reports from City Council on committee activities. Mr. O'Neill.
None.
Mr. Piotr. Mrs. Dixon. None. Mr. Herdman.
None.
Mr. Avery.
None.
Mr. Duffield.
None.
And I have none. On to current business. Staff?
Item 17 is appointments of new city arts commissioners to fill unscheduled vacancies. There are currently 2 vacancies. Their terms expires June 30th, 2020 and June 30th, 2021. There are 16 applications that council has reviewed. The vote will be done by paper ballot, and in order to be appointed, the nominees must receive at least 4 votes.
Thank you. And on this item, the individual, well, I'm going to propose at least, if my colleagues agree, the individual who gets the second number of votes gets a shorter term. That's acceptable. Any other public comments on this item before we vote? All right, seeing none, let's cast our ballots.
Councilmember Piotr votes for Barbara Glabman and Marie Little. Councilmember Herdman votes for Barbara Glabman and Marie Little. Councilmember Avery, Barbara Glabman, Marie Little. Councilmember Dixon, Barbara Glabman, Marie Little. Councilmember O'Neill, Barbara Glabman, Marie Little, Mayor Pro Tem Duffield, Barbara Glabman, Marie Little, and Mayor Muldoon. Barbara Glabman and Marie Little, so I'm not sure who gets what term.
Well, that's probably the first I've ever seen that. Great applications, and 2 people we're excited to have, and many others in the queue we're looking forward to considering the next time there are vacancies. I will entertain any creative ideas someone has for the flip of a coin Mr. Kiff suggested. Does anyone have a coin? Are there any coins up there? All right, so Barbara Glabman, we'll have it be Jefferson because he's a man, and her name sounds like a man, Glabman. And the Marie Little, she will be the Little Capitol building on the other side. All right, it's heads. So Barbara Glabman will have the longer term, and Marie Little will have the little term. Works out well. All right. Well, at least I will make that motion as such.
Okay.
Do we have to vote to confirm this
Yes,
outcome?
I'll second
Yes.
that.
Okay, let's vote.
Motion carries unanimously, so Barbara Glabman her term will be expiring in 2021 and Marie Little 2020.
Thank you, staff. Next report, item 16, if one is needed, we have staff here. Is there a request from the dais to get a staff report on this? I'm sorry, 18, thank you. All right, seeing none, public comment on this item?
Mayor Muldoon and members of the council, my name is Jim Mosher. The item before you is a comprehensive update of the City Council Policy Manual. I first wanted to correct a mistake I made in the written comments I submitted regarding the existing policy about social media called D6. I incorrectly said that had never been approved by the council. Actually, the staff report is correct. It had been presented and approved. And speaking of the city's digital presence, there's a handout in the lobby of a last-minute change to the amended policy D5, confirming what has been the city's unwritten policy that staff attempts to respond to voicemail and email messages within 24 hours. I think that's a good addition. Beyond that, I would like to say that I have a great sense of futility. Trying to comment on 337 pages of policy in 180 seconds. And I would ask, what is the rush about this? Why are the various policies not being presented in smaller chunks? And why not give the council, who is not on the ad hoc committee that has discussed this, and the public, and the boards and commissions that are affected by these policy changes the month until your next meeting to review and comment on this. So I would suggest that it be continued. I would point to the resolution that is in your agenda packet, which I think is not ready for adoption tonight. The resolution it refers to an Exhibit A, which is supposed to explain what the intent of the resolution is. There is nothing in the agenda packet that is clearly labeled as Exhibit 1. And if it is the attachment A, which has many, many pages in there, reading that and the resolution, one has no idea what the intent of the council is, because the council is apparently intending to revise some policies and delete others. The resolution does not say what existing policies are being deleted. So I really do not know what Exhibit 1 is or how it explains that, so I think the resolution needs work. Regarding the substance of the proposed changes, it's good to see recognition that the library board has the authority under the charter to set library policy, but I was shocked to see on page 18-119 what you have done to the fundamental library policy I-1, which now seems to give the council veto power over the library board's decisions. And I would like to stick up in the few seconds that are left here for the Parks, Beach, and Recreation Commission, which has a charter power and duty to establish policies related to parks, beaches, and recreation, and a power and duty to advise you on all matters involving that. I just do not understand how you could be changing those policies without their advice and recommendation and still be consistent with our charter. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. My name is Judy Chang, Chair of the Arts Commission. Several years ago, previous council made a promise to the Arts Commission and the residents of our city. That promise was a certain percentage of developer fees would be put aside for the arts. Tonight, we ask you to keep that promise. Times and circumstances change, as does the outlook, policies, and priorities of each successive city council. But what needs to stay constant are the fundamentals upon which our community is based. Art, in all its form, is essential to our city. From the concerts in the park, which last Sunday drew over 4,000 people, to the Sculpture Garden, which hosts family picnics, youth, seniors, and visitors everywhere. Our annual arts exhibition just celebrated our 53rd year. The city, through the Arts Commission, provides a variety of diverse outlets through which our friends and neighbors can enjoy and express themselves. The city has always had a strong commitment to these activities and has funded a majority of these programs through its generous support of the Arts Commission. Thank you. That funding should come not only from taxes or general fund revenues, but from a separate assessment applied to developers. That is a great philosophy. If you want to build in this city and make money in this city, you need to support the activities of the city and the citizens. The proposal you are about to vote on tonight comes as a complete surprise to the Arts Commission. We were given no advance warning and have not been asked to provide any input into the ramifications or consequences of this proposed action. Furthermore, as you know, the Arts Commission is short 2 members and as such has not been able to put together a comprehensive vision for the next 2 years. And while we understand and respect the financial realities you have to deal with, simply put, these funds into the general fund eliminates their distinct character and quite frankly will make it harder for the arts to draw the funding necessary to continue to provide our community with the world-class arts program that we currently enjoy. At this time, I would simply ask that the council table the resolution so as to allow time for the Arts Commission to put together a comprehensive proposal for disbursement of the funds. This would also allow for members of the Arts Commission to meet with interested members of the City Council so as to work out a fair and equitable resolution. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next speaker.
I'm Arlene Greer, Vice Chair of the City Commission, Arts Commission, and also resident of the community. And speaking as a resident of the community and your constituents, we thank you for your earlier support of everything that has been programmed for this year. And I concur with all of Judy's comments as well, Chair Chang's comments. So thank you again for considering our request.
Thank you, Ms. Greer. Any other comments on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the dais. Councilman O'Neill?
Sure. So a few quick notes. I just wanted to say the reason we're having this discussion is because the current City Council policy, D3, requires that we have an annual review of all of our council policies. That just hasn't happened in quite some time. And so it got me thinking about what else is in the policies that is old, needs to be replaced, needs to be updated, is being ignored. And so at my request, Mayor Muldoon appointed a subcommittee that included Mayor Muldoon, Councilman Avery, and me, and we went through all of them, all 128 city council policies. And there was a lot of updating to be done. And I'd like to say very briefly a very big thanks to our staff, which includes Deputy City Attorney Michael Torres, Carol Jacobs, Laura Detweiler, Leilani Brown, Tara Finnegan, Jay Short, Jonathan Stafford, Mike Pisani, Tim Heatherton, Kim Brandt, Simone Jurgis, and more. And we found quite a few that needed to be updated. For example, some folks might not know this, but current City Council Policy A10 actually states, and I'm going to quote, "We vote by, quote, pressing a switch to cause a green light to show for an affirmative vote, the yellow light to show an abstention, or a red light to show for a negative vote." No one at this dais has ever done any of that, but that's what our council policy calls for. Our web policy has not been updated in years, still tries to explain what a blog is. Council Policy K8 discussed a comprehensive seashore plan written in 1995 and has not been substantively changed in the last 20 years. A lot has happened and a lot has changed, and we just haven't updated any of this bureaucracy. And so what we've done, and it took a long time and a lot of meetings, we're proposing eliminating 32 policies, 78 pages, and over 12,000 words. And that is one of the biggest cuts of bureaucracy I think I've seen the city do in quite some time. And along the way, we've actually provided more freedom to the Arts Commission than what's in there right now, because the charter actually calls for a fairly generous and general set of powers for the Arts Commission. But currently, Council Policy I-9 actually specifically designates what they're allowed and not allowed to do. And the same for the Board of Library Trustees. To Mr. Mosier's comment, we're actually freeing them up under the charter to provide the policies. And I'll just note, Mr. Mosier, I don't believe that I read I-1, the revisions, to be a veto power, just as a brief note. And I'd also like to note, we're also freeing up staff to do their jobs. We're actually proposing deleting a council policy right now that dictates what exactly a staff member has to say on their voicemails. They gave them a script in our council policies. And I told Carol Jacobs, I really hope we're not employing people who we have to explain exactly what to say in their voicemails. And we need to give more discretion to our staff, frankly, and that's one of the things that we've taken up here. I know that a couple of questions have come up about I-13. And it's worth noting here that every single thing that has been programmed in the arts for the last years has come out of the general fund or the Visit Newport Beach Fund. Everything that is in the media packet that we were provided by I believe Chair Chang, the cultural arts, the art exhibitions, concerts on the green, cultural art grants, the Newport Beach art exhibition, sculpture, and all of those came out of those two funds. And in fact, right now, and this has not changed, Council Policy I-10 actually sets what the floor is for arts funding, and it's actually called arts funding, and it's $55,000 a year. This council, in this last budget cycle, allocated substantially more than that to the arts in our community through both the Visit Newport Beach Fund and through the general fund. And what has happened is that I-13 fund was originally created to do in arts and cultural facilities. We don't have those. And so when we have been diverting the 2% of unallocated public benefit fees that come out of that, we're diverting it away from core infrastructure improvements. And those are things that we have all talked about. And so when we are looking at our facilities financing plan, for example, and we're approving a Lido fire station that has to be replaced, it's over 50 years old. We're talking about the Corona Del Mar Library and Fire Station. We've allocated a substantial amount of money for those. And the truth of the matter is, in our city right now, we do not have a pro-development mindset causing more and more money to come into the facilities financing plan, and we have got to have a focus on the must-haves, not the nice-to-haves. And the must-haves right now is the core infrastructure. And so I'm proposing eliminating, the subcommittee has unanimously endorsed the recommendation that we eliminate I-13 simply because it falls into that policy that just doesn't get used. And we have got to see those hundreds of thousands of dollars going back into the community for the core infrastructure that we are seeing a dwindling amount of funding for. So I'd like to at least explain, this is a city council that supports the arts. This is a city council that, if this is approved, actually is going to free up the Arts Commission to do more of what they're called to do under the charter, not less. And so I'd like to at least state very clearly that's the intent of what we've done here.
Thank you, Professor. Councilman Piotr.
I just wanted to ditto that. I went through these hundreds of pages. I appreciate the committee's efforts in going through and cleaning this thing up. And, frankly, outside of the modification on the social media, I have no comments on it. So thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you. Councilman Herdman.
I want to thank you for your hard work also. However, I do have to say that I have been absolutely overwhelmed the last 3 days in sitting with old council policies and revised and or eliminated council policies and reading through each of them, which I have done at your recommendation, Will. Right after I was elected, the first question you asked me was, have you read the council policy notebook yet? Just trying to be diligent about this. I do have some questions and a suggestion that if this is done, and maybe it won't have to be done on such a comprehensive basis in the future, given the work that you three have done, but that as opposed to giving them to us all at once, that they be trickled out to it as you complete your work, okay, and that we have more of a scheduled, not to be so overwhelmed all at once with all these policies. My understanding of I-13 is that this originated at a time when the city was seriously considering the refurbishment and the reestablishment of the Balboa Theater, and that the language in the policy actually says that funding will be used for cultural arts, and this is the key word, facilities, not programs. Is that correct, Will?
Yes.
Okay. Back to D5, where you are eliminating an annual review of the council policies, that particular policy. What guarantee do we have if we don't commit ourselves to reviewing these policies annually that they will be looked at?
Just as a point of order, I'm going to allow the council member to decide to answer you directly,
okay,
or to suggest you ask those questions to staff, just so that there's decorum.
Carol.
And Mr.
Or Mike.
Whatever you would like.
No, I'm happy to answer that. So you're talking about eliminating D3. It's
D5 isn't D5 the one? No, D3. You're right. I'm sorry.
That's okay. So, frankly, there's no guarantee. There was no guarantee beforehand, given that it had been ignored by previous councils.
Yeah, that's true.
My very strong suggestion, frankly, would be that we remain diligent up at the dais. And look, if it turns out that there are minor modifications that need to come out of this comprehensive review, that's exactly what A6 is. Well, it's going to be modified, but that's what that policy is for currently, is to ask for modifications, and I think that we'd all be open to discussion on that.
Carol or Mike, the elimination of D3 would not prevent the council from forming an ad hoc committee each year to take a look at council policies, would it?
Absolutely not, Councilmember Herdman. I think that's, Councilmember O'Neill summarized it very succinctly. The idea being previous councils weren't necessarily doing the annual review every year, and so take that out, and the council always has the discretion at any time to do an annual review, or 3 annual reviews, or 4 annual reviews. It's at the pleasure of the council.
And what will the process be if I should stumble across a council policy that I think needs to be taken under consideration?
So there's a process already under the former A6, but it's been moved to A1 for a council member to bring something forward and place it on the agenda. And a council member always has the discretion to speak with the city manager or city attorney's office about any changes that need to be made to the city council policies.
Okay, policy B13. I read the old and the new word for word, and I cannot find any changes in it. Can you explain to me the changes in B13? What's been added or deleted? And that's the use of city facilities.
Councilmember Herdman, we added that smoking is prohibited in the park, a park facility, and/or beach. It was a
Okay.
very minor change.
Okay, thank you. Council Policy B9, naming of parks and facilities. Can you just explain to me the rationale behind the addition of, or not the addition, but changing of naming a park after, or a facility after an individual after a 15-year period of them being deceased?
Sure, Councilman Herr, I can handle that question as well. I think the idea behind most of these changes, there was a couple guiding principles, and one was to make our policies consistent with our practice. And in the city of Newport Beach, we have 2 park facilities that have been named after individuals, one Grant Howell Park and another John Wayne Park recently by the city council. So the idea was by putting a 15-year time frame after a person's been deceased to be considered for naming after a park, that it would bring our practice consistent with our policy. And Bob Henry, I'm sorry.
So Officer Henry had been deceased for 15 years before a park was named after him, and obviously John Wayne has been gone for 15 years. Is that correct?
No, I don't believe Mr. Henry had been deceased at that time, but I think at this point in time he has been deceased for 15 years.
And then D5, which is digital communication. Item E under Section B, official social media use. Why the elimination of E, which has to do the members of the city council or city commission, board, or committee must not like, share, retweet, or comment on any social media post, da 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 da. What was the rationale behind eliminating that?
I believe that the rationale was it was a little bit too restrictive. I think staff had a good intentions there, but it maybe went a little too far.
Okay.
There's already enough rules and regulations that apply to what council members can chime in on and speak about that we didn't need one more there.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Does that cover presidential tweets as well? No.
No.
Okay. Councilwoman Dixon.
Thank you. Well, actually, just to stay on that, on D5, I was not clear. So are we now no longer allowed to like, share, retweet, or comment? Is that now being prohibited?
No, you are allowed to do that.
Oh.
The prohibition is being taken out.
Oh, okay, that's fine. Okay, and back to B9.
I feel like we're playing Battleship.
On the city parks and facilities, could you explain maybe the past policy or the past practice of the city policy, except for these very few exceptions too, I guess, that I know park is named after an individual, and so are we now allowing individuals to be considered? Is this the new criteria then that does not discourage but encourages naming for individuals?
I think this is a change that's designed to reflect reality. I mean, the reality being there are parks and facilities named after individuals, and so having a policy that prohibits it doesn't actually show what the council has done. And so this change isn't necessarily a change, it's just a reflection of what the council practice is.
Okay, all right. What I would suggest, and this kind of goes to the future process of how to amend policies that we don't have to do this evening, is that we should establish, in my opinion, I would recommend, criteria for naming of parks, a little bit more detail. And I don't know if it's the person what type of person? All persons deceased for 15 years could be considered. I mean, I think there should be some established criteria of a person's individual contributions to the community or whatever. And so I would like to see that further expanded upon in terms of developing criteria. I also want to say I commend the committee for its work. This is person work because it does get into some of the technical details of how the council and the city departments operate. And I commend the efficiency and the lean and I won't say mean, but I mean the leanness of the policies. I think that is to be commended. But I would like to emphasize going forward on the process that I guess would you say on a policy base, individual policy basis, we would just agendize under the new, I have to train my brain from A6 to A1 now, procedure to agendize an item.
That's absolutely correct. And I can just say from a staff level, the amount of work that Mayor Muldoon, Councilmember O'Neill, and Councilmember Avery did on this committee, working with Carol and myself and other staff, was absolutely tremendous. It was like going back to school every day, coming in with their binder, and we were sitting and we got to work. So it's just a tremendous amount of work on this, and everyone did, I think, a really good job. But yes, so I think in the future, if there's going to be a change, we could follow A1, which was the formerly A6, to put something on the agenda, or like we said, work with the city manager's office or city attorney's office to agendize something.
So I would encourage all of us, to Mr. Herdman's point and Mr. Mosher's point, that there was just an awful lot to do. I mean, I've just read these since last Thursday, and I've read them numerous times, and it's just, to go back and forth. So I think I would encourage the council to look at each policy change, and we've got an excellent place to start now, and we can continue to improve upon it. That would be my recommendation, so thank you.
And I think the future agenda policy is going to be the A1 steak sauce policy now. So I think that's really catchy, and good job, Mr. Torres. Mr. Avery?
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to speak about the funding for the Arts Commission, and that I believe we discussed this months ago, the council's direction toward encouraging the Arts Commission to step up fundraising, and I believe that's happening. And I think most of the members of council, certainly I agree that times have changed, things have shifted, and in a town like this, it would be wonderful to have more citizens who support the arts, and we know they're out there, and I think we just need to step up the efforts to reach out and lend a compelling story for contributing to the arts in the way that we know this community could do, as we've seen happen up in Costa Mesa with the arts. So, and other cities, certainly, tremendous citizen involvement and support. So I really don't feel we've, through this policy change, taken from the arts, in that Councilman O'Neill pointed out that this would not have affected the past 4 years or so, at least, of arts spending. So it's just important to me to say that, because I think all of us up here greatly support the arts, and we don't want the commission or people in the city to think that we don't. And it's vitally important that we help fund these very important facilities going forward, certainly the fire facilities and many others, with those funds that come in, and from a what looks to be a decreasing source over time. My last comment is that this incredible Herculean task of the policies review and corrections just struck me how good our staff is, how excellent our staff is at working on this, and also the formidable talents of Mr. O'Neill were put to great use here and greatly eclipsed at least my contributions, for sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Herdman?
Yeah, I'd just like to echo Councilwoman Dixon's concerns about B9. I think that needs further work just to help the PB&R Commission out in terms of requests for naming parks after individuals, to give them some criteria to make decisions by. I'd like to see that one pulled and a little more work done on it.
Okay. Councilman O'Neill?
Sure, just a quick note on B9. That I think Mr. Torres hits it exactly right. It's the goal of B9, at least in this iteration, is to frankly just reflect the reality of what this council has been doing. I would absolutely encourage you to create that criteria, and I think that would be something I would welcome. I just didn't believe, frankly, that at our subcommittee level, that it would be a great. We would
hit all of the points, frankly, on that. So I would encourage you to do so. With that, I will move staff recommendation with the amendment of the new D5 as part of the packet.
I'll second that.
Okay, we still have some more discussion before we vote. Councilwoman Dixon.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I meant to also make a comment about the arts funding. I support what the committee has recommended, and for the reasons that Councilmember O'Neill just stated a few moments ago, that Mr. Kiff, maybe you could remind all of us how much is currently in the current 2017-18 budget to all told, because there are a number of different sources and categories coming in for supporting arts going forward.
I think it's in the range of 250,000 from various sources, but when again, not I-13.
And just to correct, and just to clarify, that would continue to fund the concerts on the green. It would continue to fund the sculpture garden phase 3, or is it 4? But the next phase. It would continue to fund the current projects, that the art exhibitions and the current projects. What is not perhaps there as a line item are the new to the community programs. I, for one, would welcome hearing that those new programs recommended by the Arts Commission and our now fully constituted Arts Commission. But to echo Mr. Avery's comments, and I've said this many times publicly, I would like personally to see more community involvement and public in terms of community support for the arts as it's evidenced in other communities. And I think that would go a long way to demonstrate to this council and future councils that is a public-private partnership that we can support arts and culture in our community together. Also, the I-13 policy was created, as our understanding has been expressed, to take over the Balboa Village Theater. At that time, it was a public owned by the city of Newport Beach. As we all know, it's now in private hands and in District 1 on the Balboa Peninsula, and I'm very excited to see the eventual unveiling of this facility and the old iconic structure by Balboa Village Theater that is being reconstituted through private ownerships that will support arts and performance art in our community. So I think we're all getting to the same place, and I just appreciate the members of the Arts Commission who are here or will be listening to this or are hearing about it, that your work is very important and valued and important for the future direction of the community, and I encourage you to keep recommending through the process, the programs to engage the community and nearby communities in all that is wonderful about Newport Beach. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Herman.
There has been a motion made and seconded to approve these, all these council policy revisions and deletions and additions, correct? All right, I'd like to go on, I will be voting in favor of that motion, but I would like to go on record as voting no on I-13 and D3, please. Thank you.
So we'll note that for the record, but if you cast a vote in favor, unless the motion's amended, you're voting for all of them. Yeah, but that's okay. This is a very intellectual conversation. I think intellectual caveats are welcomed. One thing I would like to point out is happy to do this, and thank you, Councilman O'Neill, for spearheading this, because a lot of these policies are almost treated like gotchas, like somehow we can't do something. And the truth is we can do all things that we're allowed to do through the Charter, or the 10th Amendment of the United States Constitution, which gives states the right to decide public welfare and policing powers. So I appreciate this, but I'll tell you, for the sake of courtesy to my colleagues or any commissioners who have a very compelling issue, I could care less about the red tape. They're nice guiding principles, but they don't bind us to anything. Our morality and the laws on the books bind us, and really, these are nice guiding principles, but at the end of the day, those of us who answer to the people directly, have the consent of the governed, that is where our authority comes from. It does not come from these internal policies, and I'm always disappointed when the internal policies are used to throw mud, because they're meant to be guiding principles. They're not meant to be the law of the land.
Very well said, Mr. Mayor.
With that, let's vote.
Motion carries unanimously, 7-0.
Mr. Mayor and council members, this next item, item 19, involves the Balboa Island seawall.
Mr. Mayor, excuse me, City Manager Kiff, I have to recuse myself from this because of real property interests.
Thank you. 1 second, staff.
And Mr. Mayor, we do have a presentation. Mark prepared a short presentation and a long one. He has wisely chosen, I think, to go with the short one. So if you do want more detail, know that we probably have that. So with that, turn it over to Mark Vukojevic.
Thank you. Mayor, City Council members, good evening. Mark Vukojevic, the City Engineer, Deputy Public Works Director, and I have with me Bob Stein, our Assistant City Engineer. You've seen some of these presentations in the past, and so we have 9 slides. We want to just summarize with you what to expect with this project, and for your consent and permission to begin the advertising of the project. Bob?
Thank you, Mark. This project, we're introducing the proposed seawall concrete cap project for Balboa Island and requesting authorization to advertise and bid the project for construction. The dramatic photo that we see here on the north side of Balboa Island shows a challenge here where we have the bay water over 2 feet higher than the adjoining boardwalk. And staff looked at Little Balboa Island for inspiration on what we could do, at least in the short term, to protect Balboa Island from future flooding. And the photo on the right shows the proposed cap that's been in existence on Little Balboa Island now for almost 30 years. So the proposed project would construct a 9-inch cap extension on the south and north sides of Balboa Island. Note that we're not proposing any extension at this time on the Grand Canal or Little Balboa Island. And in addition to the 9-inch cap extension, we're also proposing to provide gaps in this 9-inch cap to provide access to the beaches and public docks. So this is a somewhat dramatic photo from 2010 showing overtopping of the wall on the south side of Balboa Island at Turquoise. And this occurred during a high tide event. And as you probably know, during high tide events, staff from the Municipal Operations Department, they close the tide valves so that the high tides don't back up through the storm drains onto the streets, which works fine, except if it's raining, any water that is caught on the streets on Balboa Island is not able to drain out. Now, this problem is exacerbated under situations where you have overtopping or additional water then becomes ponded on the boardwalk, requiring our staff from Municipal Operations Department to come out with portable pumps to pump the water back over the island seawalls. So the proposed 9-inch cap would do 3 things. One, first, it would prevent this overtopping wave event from contributing water to the boardwalk. It would also, at the same time, limit the amount of water that would need to be pumped back over the wall. And thirdly, it would also protect staff that has to be working under somewhat hazardous conditions from this overtopping event. So the proposed 9-inch cap would raise the top of wall elevation on the north side to 8.5 feet on the north side and to 9 feet on the south side. And that the reason there's a higher wall requirement on the south side is because that's the side that's subject to storm surges and wind waves. And you can see that those elevations are comparable to what we have on Little Island, 8.7 and 9 feet. So while that 9 inches does provide us better protection on Balboa Island, also note that if you're looking at other marinas and harbors in Southern California, their top wall elevations are 9.6 feet, significantly higher. So here is a photo showing the existing cap that we put, actually the cap that we proposed on Little Balboa Island in 1988. It's almost 30 years old, performing very well. It's about a 12-inch high cap. And so our proposed solution for Balboa Island would follow this type of design. Now, I mentioned that we're going to leave gaps to provide residents and visitors to access the beaches. We'd have these gaps in the seawall at every street end and also at the public docks. It's a 3-foot wide opening. And what would occur in a high tide event is our mod folks would come and insert this stop board, which is affixed with 4 bolts, that would match the top level of the proposed 9-inch cap. And then we'd have a consistent barrier to protect against a high tide along with storm surge events. So this is the penultimate slide. Because we want to maintain access on the boardwalk for residents and visitors during construction, the contractor would be limited to a work area 4 feet wide adjacent to the seawall, leaving a 4-foot wide area that would be delineated by construction tape for residents to continue to be able to enjoy the boardwalk. In this case, the contractor would be allowed to stage his trucks, materials at Collins Avenue, and he'd work on the seawall from Turquoise to Ruby. It's about 450 feet. And he'd have 2 to 3 weeks to do the work, mobilize, prepare the surfaces, install the rebar, place the concrete, remove forms, and then demobilize. Once he completed that, he'd be able to move to another street end. And we'd allow the contractor to work at 3 different locations around the island at the same time. And with that kind of scenario, it probably would take him about 16 weeks to perform the work. If we advertise and start construction in end of October, we'd hope to get maybe 1/3 of the work done before the holiday season. We'd take a break during December and then have him continue after the first of the year. Engineers estimate about $1.5 million. And this is our last slide. We're requesting authorization to advertise and bid the project for construction. And with their authorization, we would advertise the project as early as next Wednesday.
Thank you. A couple questions from me before I allow my colleagues to chime in. I see here the adopted budget was for roughly $5 million for this task, but we're estimating now $1.5 to $2 million. So would you please explain to those watching what happened there?
So we actually were anticipating that we might have to do some more significant work on the west end of the island, which has seen the most stresses. And so we did an evaluation to see if those walls were in good enough condition to be able to simply put a cap. The plan B was actually putting in new seawalls, which would have been a significant cost. So at this time, we believe that we can put the cap on the west end, and the remaining fees would be returned back to the general fund or Thailands.
Now, what will this cap do to the structural integrity of the wall, both in that location and basically island-wide?
So our evaluation did show that the wall is in good enough condition to be able to handle a 9-inch cap without destabilizing it. We would be affixing the new cap appropriately with rebar doweled into the existing cap. So our consultant does not envision any destabilization due to this rather a minor capping extension.
But just to be clear, it does not improve the structural integrity. It's just your consultant's opinion that does not hurt it.
So you're absolutely correct. That as part of this capping project, there will be annual monitoring of the seawalls to see if we see any additional stresses. It's a very good point, especially on the west end.
And you had cited a couple other areas or harbors that have seawalls. I believe you said 9.7?
That's correct, 9.6. That's Dana Point, Marina del Rey, the ports of LA and Los Angeles, at least 9.6. Some are higher.
Oh, and one of my understandings of this cap is that it's not necessarily to address rising sea levels, although there's an argument that it's very slowly rising. There's also an argument last 2 years it's been declining, but more to deal with currents and swells. Is that an accurate statement?
We, as we can see by this photo here, have only a few inches of freeboard here, and sometimes we don't. So the photo we did not include here shows that the last wave overtopping was between 2 and 5 inches. So the 9 inches provides us 4 inches of additional freeboard. It's not considered a lot of freeboard by engineering standards. So if we did actually experience any sea level rise over, say, the next 10 years, that would at least give us a little bit of room in order to do our planning.
And going back to the, I had an excellent question I thought lined up, and I lost it in this beautiful picture. I'll let Councilwoman Dixon ask questions, and I'll return.
Thank you, Mayor. So just to clarify, this particular project, I thought in the new budget for 17-18 that we allocated $8 million for seawalls? Was it, or was it 5?
It's about 6, but
6.
remember too, one of our strategies is to start to accrue money if we need to eventually address probably the Grand Canal, and then as well as the west side over years. So even if we're not spending it all on this capping projects, we would return and reserve that money for projects in the future.
Right, but I also thought, going back a year when Councilmember Selich, at the time, proposed these various improvements, and it was cap and repair and replace. So are we doing any repair or replacement, or what is the schedule? Or not part of this project, obviously, but do you see that? Is that happening out of this current budget, or the funds are being reserved? If you could just lay out what we envision.
So there are 2 pots of money in the current budget. One is for this capping project, and then there's another $4 million, I believe, allocated for installing new seawalls on the west end. So we're not proposing to install those new seawalls on the west end, so I assume that money then will be returned to wherever it needs to be. But I also understand there's another fund that is a savings account for the new seawall, and the intent is that if we can get 10, 15, or 20 years more of useful life out of this seawall, that'll give us enough time to save the $70+ million we need for new seawalls.
All right, so just to be clear in my own mind then, because the last 2 or 3 years, we've been talking about repair and replace and cap. So obviously this is the cap project, but the repair and replace, we do not have a plan, a timeline to do that until needed, and it could be several years from now.
Well, let me just add to that too. So currently, every year on an annual basis, we do repairs of the seawall. So we have contractors that come out and patch and caulk and repair anything that's broken. And we have our municipal operations department too that does some of those repairs as well too. The big question is going to be on future replacement, how and what to replace it with. And that's going to take some time, and that will be the next discussion over the next few years. What kind of wall? What's going to be the construction method? Things like that too. So this gives us some time to have that discussion with the community, and that involves the permitting end of it too, because that type of construction will involve us being in the water, and it's much more complicated.
All right, so for the community's edification, this is the seawall project that we'll be doing, the city will be doing this year, and then we're not doing any major project work on these seawalls until we determine what needs to be done over the course of the next several years. Because when we talked about this on the prior council, it was like we had to do all of this within the next few years, and it was anywhere from 75 million to 110 million. So we're not there anymore, apparently.
That's correct. So we're satisfied with this approach right now to do the cap, and then keep an eye on it on an annual basis, in particular the Grand Canal, and then begin work on planning for the future replacement.
That's very good.
Remember too that one of the things we didn't know when we talked to the previous council, we didn't know the quality and the remaining life of those west end seawalls. And as Bob and Mark are confirming, we think we have more time there.
Great.
So we can save up the money for the larger project and have a broader discussion with the community.
Maybe it's just worth noting, our biggest concern was on the west end. And the
Yes.
thing that we found out on the west end when we did further investigations were that the walls in the west end are actually much deeper than we originally thought. And so
And more
therefore,
so-
that provided us
there's-
the additional
Okay.
safety there.
Very good. That's excellent news. All right. Thank you very much.
Councilman Duffield, Mayor Pro Tem Duffield, excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm so thankful and grateful and that our staff approached the seawall as they did. And it was a little hairy there for a while, the 60 million, 70 million. But as your harbor representative, water boy man here, grown the Tom Sawyer of the harbor, I'm very satisfied with this approach. I have no problems with it. I think it should have been done 3 years ago, but that it's being done is just awesome. And I'm just applaud you guys for taking this. I know it's hard for you to do jobs like this when you're looking to try to solve a problem for a 100-year fix, and that this will do just so many good things to the residents there. And I did want to address, I believe this probably won't, or will it, this is a question, affect their FEMA insurance premiums, or will it help them at all in this? Will they reevaluate that? Or?
So my understanding, and this is coming from Dave Webb, that this will not, that FEMA looks for 2 feet of freeboard before they start seeing some benefit. So this, I do not believe, is going to tip the FEMA insurance rates down.
Okay, well, that's disappointing. But again, they've done this all over the harbor, where we go ahead and we Band-Aid, if you will, our bulkheads, and I've seen it done, and it's very, very effective. And I'm especially when the sidewalk, when the homes start so much inboard of the bulkhead, the weight of the home and everything isn't a lot like it is on some waterfront homes where it's way perched out farther. So while there is an effect of the homes, yes, it isn't as daunting, if you will, as it is in other places in the harbor. And we have fixed bulkheads, Band-Aid, if you will, there, and it has worked very well, even with the extra load. So I'm just so happy you guys took it this way, and I know it was, again, hard for you. There was a huge study done that was very thorough and expensive, and it called out for, a brand new seawall, which we couldn't afford. So this is wonderful, and I can't wait to see it finished. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Councilman Piotr.
All of this would have been avoided if they just would have dredged a little bit more and built the island up a couple extra feet. I agree with Duffy. The wall is simple. It will add structural integrity, even though that's not its design intent. The height of it will be 8'6", basically from Collins Bridge to the Grand Canal on the north side, and then 9 feet from the Grand Canal to Collins Bridge on the south side. And again, you kept the design simple. I congratulate you on that. I think you need to work on bolting in these 2-bys, but coming up with something that's a little simpler and easier to maintain besides bolts down by the waterfront. But the overall design is very good, very simple, and very effective. So thank you for simplifying for us.
Thank you. Councilman, Mayor Pro Tem Duffield chimed on the question that I was going to ask. I knew it was a good question because a lot of residents had asked about that FEMA issue. So thank you for asking that question. I would like to encourage, but I don't know how, it's probably not the right time for the savings to continue to occur. And there's been talks about having a plan that could adapt quickly based on what does happen down the road for integrity of the seawall and sea level. And my more serious question is, has Catalina sent the check yet? No, okay. Any public comments on this item? Please step forward and state your name.
Thank you, Mayor Muldoon and members of the council. My name happens to be Jim Mosier. And following up on Councilman Piotter's comment, I seem to recall the earlier designs of the 3-foot gaps and the so-called stop boards that go into them showed a slotted construction that the board just dropped in. And I was curious to see this new bolted thing. Sounds much more elaborate and complicated. And I'm wondering if that's because we are worrying that vandals are going to come along and pull the boards out, or what is the reason for that? Thank you.
Mr. Mosier, I think it's a great question. Staff, could you discuss the prior design, the current design, and why you changed it?
Sure. So it is a good question. Our staff from the Municipal Operations Department were concerned about having the slot design and having to be able to clean it out every time before they can get a board to fit in. And they're also worried about the seal. So we've looked at 3 different options. This option is probably the most secure, but there are other options that would be easier to install and to take out that we're also considering. So we're still kind of in that last stage here. So we're looking to make this easy and yet have a secure fit to the seawall.
And is that seaward or ocean facing? Or is it?
This would be adjacent to the boardwalk.
Okay, so that board actually would go on the boardwalk side.
Correct.
Of the seawall.
Correct.
And it's bolted through on the other side, and that, okay, interesting. Thank you.
Good evening, members of City Council and staff. I'm Kathleen Andrews, and a Newport Beach resident and a homeowner for more than 20 years. I'm in District 3 with Duffy Duffield. And I've got a geology background and now work as a registered geologist for the Division of Oil and Gas as an oil and gas regulator. And I first want to thank you and previous City Council members for all the beautiful infrastructure here in Newport Beach. And I'm passionate about climate change because as a parent of 2 almost adult girls, I'm motivated towards working for a good future for them. And I think that the cap on the seawall that the city's discussing is necessary because saving up for a larger project later, because the king tides and storm surges are becoming higher and more frequent with time. And I do approve of bidding for the wall, but we all know that the sea level is going to keep rising and that this is an adaptation rather than a mitigation. It's tempting to end up thinking that the problem of sea level rise is too big to solve or that someone else should do something about it. However, there are things that Newport Beach as a city can do about climate change and the associated sea level rise. Because of my passion about climate change, I found Citizens Climate Lobby, which is a tremendously effective group for creating the political will for a livable world. And it's good news that the wall between Congress and climate change is coming down. The Congressional Climate Caucus has now 50 members, 25 Democrats and 25 Republicans, and it's growing every month. Ed Royce just recently joined that. However, as city council members, you can have even more power than Congress. And I just wanted to offer that I and other members of Citizens Climate Lobby are willing to meet individually with members of the City Council to answer questions you might have about adopting a resolution so we can really mitigate climate change rather than just do a stopgap measure. As good as it is, and seems like it's smooth sailing towards building that. And to talk about things that other cities can do and are doing about climate change.
Thank you, Ms. Andrews. Next speaker, please.
Mayor Muldoon and City Council. My name is Craig Smith. I'm a former president of a very large international architect and engineering company. We had 3,000 employees. My wife and I own a home on the Balboa Peninsula, and we've lived here for 18 years. During that time, we've experienced a number of incidences of flooding in our neighborhood. in common with Balboa Island, and notably in 2005, 2008, 2010. So with that in experience in my mind, I really want to thank the council and commend you for the action moving forward on seawalls on Balboa Island. I think that's a very important thing for our community. But I also think that's not enough. That's the first step, but as the lady preceding me just stated, that doesn't address the basic causes. Seawalls alone are not going to stop our problems. We need to have action to address the fundamental or root causes of climate change. And these are the evidenced by ocean acidification, sea level rise, warming waters. I've personally looked at not all, but a vast amount of the technical and scientific data, and I'm convinced that this is something that's real and it's upon us. Beginning in 2008, the Navy on the East Coast began hiring engineering contractors to develop feasibility studies and cost estimates for relocating naval facilities inland, or to hire grounds, or to basically raise them. At the same time, the Department of Defense has initiated a program to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So I ask you to think about adopting a resolution that would be forwarded to Congress that would state that the city of Newport Beach, one of our prime, visible, successful coastal communities, is concerned about this and would like Congress to take positive steps and enact legislation that would address the root causes. I think if we do this, this would be something that would set an example, and it would also not be a futile gesture, a futile symbolic gesture. It would be something that would be taken up amidst the chorus of cries that you see coming across the country today for action at the federal level. So I thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right, seeing none, bring it back to the dais. Councilwoman Dixon.
Yes, mentioning Balboa Peninsula reminded me to follow up on a question I've been meaning to ask. There are public city seawalls on Balboa Peninsula, rather. Are they in need of capping in this project, or how are we addressing those seawalls on the peninsula?
So we actually do have one project that's in design right now. I believe it's in Craig Smith's neighborhood. It's between Lindo and Island, where we do have this periodic flooding of the streets there. And so there's a reach of about 160 feet where the wall is about 1.5 feet too low. So we're looking to design and build it, hopefully this year, to a level of 9 feet to protect those neighborhoods. But you're correct, we do have, like at all the street ends, those are city-owned seawalls. And the peninsula is, in some ways, as vulnerable as Balboa Island. So it is something that we're going to have to keep on the radar.
Well, I actually thought, again, in the last council, there was a presentation by Public Works where you identified those public seawalls in other parts of the city. So are they being addressed at some point? How are we going to make sure that they are running in tandem with these projects based on their need to be capped or repaired or replaced?
I want to mention the building department. So the building department is actually actively working with FEMA right now on the concerns of flooding on the peninsula, especially from the ocean side.
Right.
And so they are now formulating a proposal to present to the federal government on how to have a beach berm program to protect homes on the ocean side. But they also they surveyed the seawalls on the bay side, and so it's now on everyone's radar, And so as we are monitoring the bay levels, if we start to see indications that sea levels are rising as some have predicted, it's going to require us to take action in fairly short order.
Well, and also the repair and maintenance, because that's what I remember the discussion being 2 years ago, that those were very old as the Balboa Island seawalls that need to be addressed simultaneously.
That's correct too, and as part of all of the work that our maintenance and operations department is doing and public works, we look at all of those walls, especially, and believe it or not, the time to find problems with a lot of those walls is when the tides are high, and you find where your leaks and cracks are and things like that too. But the certain area that Bob was talking about, 150 feet, that was a result of all the community meetings that we had over the last 5 years as the next priority area in terms of elevation. The other ones now, in the future, those are going to be repair work items that we'll continue to work on.
All right, so I could have confidence we're in Balboa Peninsula seawalls are included as we go forward in terms of evaluating their performance and stability.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman O'Neill.
I move staff recommendation.
Second.
Seeing no other requests to discuss, let's vote.
With Councilmember Herdman recusing himself, the motion carries 6-0.
Madam Clerk.
Motion to reconsider the vote on any action taken by the City Council, either this meeting or the previous meeting, may be made only by one of the council members who voted with the prevailing side.
Any motions for reconsideration? Seeing none, we are adjourned.